Hey everybody, this is Chapter 6, or Section 6 of State Capitalism and World Revolution by Cyril James, written in collaboration with Raya Deniyevskaya and Grace Lee Boggs. The chapter before this was titled The Class Struggle. If you're interested in looking that up, I'm just putting up these pieces. Each chapter is an individual piece. So, yeah. Alright, let's go. Section 6, the theory of the party. A. The Stalinist theory and practice of the party is the direct result of the Stalinist conception of plan. The party consists of the elite, the most efficient, the most loyal, the most devoted, etc. The party mobilizes the proletariat politically, economically, and morally to carry out the plan. There is no parallel with the political parties and politics of capitalist competition. There is here no parallel with the political parties and politics of capitalist competition and bourgeois democracy. In state capitalism, the state becomes capitalistic in the sense of administration, supervision, control against the proletariat. It's a little windy. You're going to have to bear with me on that, though, because I'm not going inside. It's a beautiful day. The party forms the state in its own image, which is the reflection of the productive process of state capitalism. That was the party of Hitler, despite historical differences. That is the party of Stalin. The Stalinist parties outside Russia function on the same model. The Stalinist parties outside Russia's attitude to their membership and proletariat is of an elite leading backward workers. All initiative, policy, direction comes from the Stalinist leaders. Society will be saved if society follows the leaders, defends them, puts its trust in them. Historical circumstances may alter the leaders' practice, but in their fundamental conceptions there is no difference. Historical circumstances may alter their practice, but in their fundamental conceptions there is no difference whatever between the Communist Party in Russia and the Communist Party in the United States. B. Upon the basis of its analysis of state capitalism and plan, the Leninist Party must form its own revolutionary theory of the party. The party is, in Lenin's words, based upon the factory, but upon the progressive corporation. The party is, in Lenin's words, based upon the factory, but upon the progressive cooperation aspect of the factory, unity, discipline, and organization of the working class in unalterable opposition to the theory and practice of the elite. Every age has its own specific development of production and its specific social relations. Each separate international has its own separate and antagonistic conception of the party, which is rooted in its own social base and its conception of its political tasks in relation to that base. Marx's conception of the party in 1848, the way Marx organized the First International, carefully explained by him the organization of the Second International, which Lenin accepted as sound up to 1914, the organization of the Third International, all were different and show a dialectical progression. Lenin never conceived of a mass party of 2.5 million people before the struggle for power. That's an interesting sentence. Lenin never conceived of a mass party of 2.5 million people before the struggle for power. The whole of the Stalinist theory and the practice of the organization of the party is based upon the administrative bureaucratic plan. Conversely, the Revolutionary Party expands and develops its own theory on the basis of the vast revolutionary upheavals which are stimulated in the proletariat by the structure of state capitalism. That last sentence was in italics. I'm going to read it again. Conversely, the Revolutionary Party expands and develops its own theory on the basis of the vast revolutionary upheavals which are stimulated in the proletariat by the structure of state capitalism. The European proletariat in Italy and France and Spain and the American proletariat have already shown us that from the beginning of the social revolution, the proletariat as a whole will be organized to become the state and to manage production. Here concretely is the embodiment of Lenin's reiterated phrase, quote, to a man, end quote, which was impossible of realization in backward Russia in 1917. Not only does the revolutionary proletariat of our age make its tremendous mass mobilizations, the petty bourgeoisie does the same as in the Nazi Party and the almost overnight creation of the French rally of millions by de Gaulle. The Stalinist leaders aim to control the mass proletarian mobilizations in exactly the same manner as de Gaulle aims to control those of the petty bourgeoisie. The Leninist Party in 1950, in practice where it can, but in theory always, must be the expression of the mass proletarian mobilization aimed against the bureaucracy as such. The bureaucracy in Russia, in France, and Italy, even where it is in opposition, and in the United States, is the embodiment of the plan of state capitalism. No question is more important theoretically, not only internally but externally, than this of the relation between party, the state, and the plan. For theoreticians and millions of workers everywhere, it is the central question. No substantial section of any society today will die in defense of private property. That today is dead. The question is, can the nationalized property be planned without having as the inevitable consequence the domination of a single party? The popular formulation, one-party state, is absolutely and exactly right. Quote, Johnson Forrest, end quote, given here the essentials of the answer. C. What does the Fourth International have to say on this question? It can be summed up in the following. The Stalinists are criminals. Opposed to democracy in the party, the Trotskyists are believers in democracy as practiced by Lenin. The history of Trotskyist theory of the party, however, reinforces Stalinism in spite of all its criticism. In 1931, Trotsky believed that, quote, with the weakening of the party or with its degeneration, even an unavoidable crisis in economy can become the cause for the fall of the dictatorship, end quote. What actually took place was the reverse. When the bureaucratic administrative plan of the ruling class was finally substituted for the planning of the revolutionary proletariat, it was the Bolshevik Party that was liquidated. State property remained. D. 15 years later, with the Bolshevik Party destroyed, the Fourth International improves upon the original thesis. The World Congress thesis says, quote, the political dictatorship today as 20 years ago is decisive in preventing the complete collapse of planning, the breakthrough of the petty capitalist market, and the penetration of foreign capital into Russia, end quote. Quote, the political dictatorship, end quote, is an abstraction. Concretely, it is the party of Stalin, the murderers of the Bolshevik Party, the antithesis in every respect of the Bolshevik Party. The theory is false, whether it is standing on its head or on its feet, and in either form it is useless as a theoretical weapon against Stalinism. E. Unfortunately, this conception is not confined to Russia. The first sentence of the transitional program states that the crisis of the revolution is the crisis of revolutionary leadership. This is the reiterated theme. Exactly the opposite is the case. It is the crisis of the self-mobilization of the proletariat. As we shall show, and it is perfectly obvious logically, this theme of orthodox Trotskyism implies that there is a competition for leadership, and that whereas the other internationals have betrayed, the Fourth International will be honest. Exactly the contrary must be the analysis. The concept that the whole problem is a problem of revolutionary leadership does not, cannot, upon its political premises, pose on the one hand the Stalinist leadership as clear-sighted, determined leaders with their own theory, program, policy for the enslavement of the proletariat, and opposed to them ourselves as leaders, not simply, quote, honest, end quote, but with a totally different conception of the role, movement, and function of the proletariat. Honesty and dishonesty, sincerity and betrayal imply that we shall do what they, because of, quote, supple spines, end quote, have failed to do. We do not propose to do what they have failed to do. We are different from them in morals because we are different from them in everything. Origin, aims, purposes, strategy, tactics, and ends. The fundamental antagonism Johnson Forrest derived from the theory of state capitalism. From the Stalinist observation of state capitalism, the Stalinist conception of the party becomes the essence of bureaucracy, bureaucratic administration, bureaucratic organization, the bureaucratic party. For the Fourth International, on the other hand, it is a matter of life and death. In the analysis of modern economy, to counterpose what has been created by the modern economy, the mass mobilization of the proletariat and sections of the petty bourgeoisie, as an opposition in form and content to Stalinism and the social democracy, and our role as party in relation to this. To say that all the proletariat needs is revolutionary leadership drowns all differences between us and strengthens their conception of the party. Trotsky, at any rate, was practiced in the leadership of revolution. The transitional program, and particularly the conversations preceding the transitional program, are sufficient indication of Trotsky's profound comprehension of the mass movement. But as this whole document has shown, he gave it no theoretical basis. Trotsky did not relate it to the new stage of world economy. The result is the increased revolutionism of the masses becomes nothing else in the minds of his followers but an increased reaction to the crimes of capitalism, a mass base for leadership. The theory, as stated, has had funeral consequences in our movement. Germain, Ernest Mandel, for example, writes in an exhaustive analysis of the Stalinist parties, quote, "But despite all that has been revealed about the crimes of the GPU, the large mass of Stalinist workers will continue to follow their Stalinist leaders, or will fall back into complete passivity until the day when the Trotskyist parties can prove to them, in practice, the superiority of their policy over the policy of Stalinism," end quote. Fourth International, May 1947. In the resolution presented to the World Congress in 1948 by our European co-thinkers, there was pointed out in detail the practical consequences for the politics of this conception of the party, which constantly appears in the strategy and tactics of the Fourth International, particularly in France. It is the placing of this fantastic responsibility upon the Trotskyist organizations, as they are, that in the end produces Pablo. The end. For those curious, there's pieces by Robert J. Alexander on my channel that discuss this whole period of post-Trotsky Trotskyism on the international level, in the immediate aftermath of World War II. That would be really relevant here. Also extremely relevant would be I put up a little biography of Pablo that I found on Marxist.org, because Pablo is someone, if you follow like the history of Trotskyism at all, he's a person that people always talk about and criticize and discuss. So getting a handle on like what his ideas are and like what his innovations or consistencies on Orthodox Trotskyism is important to get your head around, to understand the political context of these debates. Thanks for listening.